Okay, guys, good. So, if you remember, yesterday we have seen a basic introduction about what is a class and what is an object. Sorry, not an object. What is a variable and what exactly a um, data type is, just an examples itself, not with respect to the core Java concepts. We have studied an introduction part, like if you consider some examples in a real world, how can we call it as a variable, and as well as how can we call it as a data type. So let us switch to the actual core Java concepts and let us start discussing about what is this variable and what exactly this. Okay, so what is this variable and what exactly this data types are? So let me bring my Java documentation as well to discuss the things. Okay, 1 second, it's being loaded. Set. Okay, so here Java. In this Java, we have already studied up to this configuration here. Okay, whatever the configuration we have, we just studied all the configuration up to here. So the point we need to start with it is a variables. Variable is a memory location where we can store some values. Okay, within a variable, we can store some values into that. Usually, we will specify the data type for each and every variable. Okay, so what exactly the data type? We will see moving ahead basically. One thumb rule we can say it as variable is a memory location where we can store some value into that. A memory location in Java where a value can be stored, we can consider it as a variable. That's it. Good. So an example for this one is, if you remember yesterday, we discussed about that particular point, which is storing a contact and creating a sticky notes. All these things we are going to assign a value, and moving ahead, we are going to call those values itself, which we can treat it as a variables only. Okay, which we can treat it as a variables only. That's fine, done the deal. So ultimate point out over here is it's a memory location in Java where a value can be stored. That's fine. There are a different types of a variables are there: a local variable, non-static variable, and a static variable. So these are the three different types of variables whatever we have. Okay, we will study in details about this one moving ahead, not exactly right now. But in continuation with the variable, the concept we have is a data types. In Java or any other programming language, data type represents which type of a value can be stored and what will be the size of that value. Data types are the key basically. So, in the real world, data type and variables are combined together. Okay, data types and variables both are combined together. And what we are going to do means, if we want to define a variable, it's mandatory to pass data type. So data type represents what type of data you want to create, or simply how much memory you want to allocate for that variable. Okay, will be specified there. So it's a mandatory for us to specify the data type for any kind of a variable whatever we are creating within our programs. Okay, whatever the things we are creating in our programs, it's mandatory for us to pass these data types. Good. Then the next point on top of this particular one is, how can I define these things in the program? Right. We should know how exactly we are going to define these things in a program. As I have mentioned yesterday, We are going to use Eclipse as our editor to write programs. Right, we are going to use Eclipse as our editor in order to write the programs. Okay, so Eclipse is a default editor to write down the programs. I have already created my Eclipse editor. Now, I just want to use a command that will, okay, that will write down a programs. So here, what I'm doing means I'm just launching down my Eclipse editor. The only thing is I'm performing a double click operation on my Eclipse icon in the desktop. At that, it's going to open the desired documentation or the editor window here. And whenever it is trying to open the Eclipse editor, this is the screen it's displayed. Eclipse Launcher window. Select a directory as a workspace. In which directory you want to save your test scripts, you have to specify. And by default, there is a separate directory given out over here. Just leave it as a default and hit a OK button. If you want to store your test scripts into a specific folder, browse to that particular folder and create your scripts. I don't want to change my location. Hence, I am giving with a default one and I'm hitting an OK button. And whenever I hit a OK button, I'm getting some error messages as the editor is already in an open state. Okay, so this is the editor which it was already open. Okay, cool. And now at the very first time, whenever you are opening the editor, this is not the screen which it's being populated. There is some other screen which it will populate. Let me show you how it looks like. Switch workspace. One second. Let me check this one. Documents. And then inside the documents, let me create a new folder. Okay, so here, go to the documents, and here inside the documents, I'm just creating a sample folder, new folder. Eclipse. So, I'm just, what I'm trying to do means I'm just trying to get a customized location. So this is what my customized location is. So whatever the test scripts I want to create, I'm moving ahead. I want to store it in the location and click on an OK button. So whenever you have chosen an OK button, okay, so go back here. It's launching the editor. Okay, it will take a few seconds to launch the editor. Okay, let it load. See, the editor is launching at that location, whatever you have specified. Let it load. Okay, let it load. And once it got loaded, then I can show you what exactly the things that we need to consider. Okay, it will take a few seconds to load a new directory. Let it. Wait. It's taking a minute at a time. Okay, that's fine. Let's wait. Okay, so whenever you are launching Eclipse Editor in your machine, this is the way how it's going to looks like, guys. Okay, this is the way how it's going to looks like. And at the top right corner, there is a workbench option available for us. Okay, there is a workbench option available for us. Just click on that workbench. Automatically, it will be navigating you to the editor. So, choose the workbench. It's navigating me to the editor. Basically, I just want to show you that workbench. That's the reason I have used that particular workspace. I'm just switching to my previous workspace itself. Okay, but whenever you are launching your Eclipse editor for the very first time, that option will display for you. Choose the workbench. Automatically, it's been opening the screen which it was opened for me. Okay, that's the simple point which you need to consider. Just click on a workbench at the top right corner. Okay, launch the editor, Eclipse Editor, leave the default workspace and select workbench option at the top right corner. That's it. At the top right corner. That's it. That's a simple point which I need to consider. And whenever you have chosen a workbench, this is the screen it will display. On a left hand side, inside the package explorer, I can see multiple projects as I have created them. Whereas for you people, you don't find these many projects as you haven't created anything from your end. Kids. And one more thing which we need to consider with respect to an Eclipse is an editor which supports multiple programming languages. It means I am not only a Java program, I can write down my Java, .NET, Python, HTML, Apex, any code I can write down within this particular Eclipse editor. So what I'm going to do right now means go to File and go to New. As my current requirement is to work on a Java programming language, I can pick a Java project or go to others and here search for Java and here is a Java project. Okay, search for Java and here is a Java project. Click on it and hit next button. Okay, hit the next button. So here it is asking me to pass my project name here. Okay, it is asking me to pass my project name here. Just give any name. Okay, just give any name. Okay, so here I'm giving a name as batch 122 Java and click on a next button. So whenever you clicked on a next button, here the screen it is being populated. This is the source tab which is being highlighted, and internally inside the project there is an SRC folder which it is being created. And if you observe the projects or libraries, by default in the libraries, as we are creating a Java project, automatically Eclipse is adding this JRE system library for us. If I created something related to a .NET, the .NET related files will be added by my Eclipse. And as soon as I clicked on a finish, see on a left hand side, here I can find my project, whatever I have created. Okay, this is the project, whatever I have created. And there is an expand symbol here. Guys, if you observe, there is an expand symbol here. This expand symbol, if you click on that, this is being expanded, and if you can look into it, there is an SRC and a JRE system library folder. And whenever I expand that JRE system library folder, if you clearly observe, these files are pulled from your C drive, programming files, Java, JRE, and a lib folder. So the bottom line is whatever the Java configured in your machine, this Java project pulled down the required jar files from that folder and it added all those files to the JRE system library. One thumb rule is whenever we have created a new Java project within your Eclipse editor, you can find an SRC and the next one is a JRE system library folder. Okay, SRC and as well as a JRE system library folder. That's it. That's a simple thing, guys. Am I clear for you till now how to create a Java project within your Eclipse editor, or any questions for me so far, guys? Yes. Okay. No, the thing is, yes, as said earlier, maybe okay, see here, I'm just using an older version of an Eclipse. It doesn't the case with you. Basically, you might have used a latest version of an Eclipse editor. That's not a problem. Basically, the versions are differ. Apart from that, everything is one and the same. Okay, the versions are might be different. It doesn't mean that you have to use a neon. You can use anything else. That's fine at all. That's completely fine. Okay, cool. Done the deal. Done up to here. And then the next point that I need to consider on top of this particular one is, okay, so I have a specified, okay, I have a specified my Eclipse editor. And now what I need to do is, okay, good. We have created our Eclipse editor, and even we have created a new Java project. So next, where can I create my variables and all those things? Right? Within the Java project, we need to create everything within a Java class itself. So we are going to create everything inside a Java class itself. We are not doing it outside the Java class. Anything, whatever we want, we are going to define it within a Java class itself. Here in this situation, I haven't created any Java classes. So I need to create a Java class. Okay, I need to create a Java class here. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do right now means go back to your editor, right click on your src, okay, new, and I can choose an option as a Java class. So whenever we have a chosen as a Java class, automatically a new Java class will be created. Okay, so here what exactly this Java class will do, I'll show you that. Create a Java class and now define any name. I'm giving my name as an example one. So whenever I give my name as an example one, the use of the default package is discouraged. Okay, this kind of a prompt it's been populating. Okay, the use of this prompt is displayed. Okay, that's fine. So once after we have a specified this one, I don't know what exactly this warning message is. Let us ignore it for now. I'm just defining a class name here and I'm clicking on a finish button. In the name prompt, I have a defined a name, any unique name, it's up to you. But the only thumb rule is that name should start with an uppercase. If I give with a lowercase, what it will do means my Java will throw an error message stating that all the classes should start with an uppercase. So in the current situation, I'm just giving it as an example one and I hit the finish button. So the only thing what you want to do is src is the folder where in which you want to create your Java classes. So directly right click on the src, new, and choose a Java class. That's it. Right click on an src, choose new as a Java class. That's it. That's a simple point which you need to consider. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So done the deal. So I have created a Java class here now. And on top of this Java class, we need to define our variables and all those things. But the thing is, if you can look at the syntax, public class example name. Example one is the class that I have created here. Public is a keyword and class is a keyword. And if you can look at the keywords within the Eclipse editor, all the keywords are highlighting in a different color. See, public is highlighting in a bold red color, class is also highlighting it in a bold red color. If you can look at that syntaxes, we can confirm that these are the keywords. Okay, these are the keywords. Okay, good. And after that, the next point is I need to define a variables. Okay, I need to define a variable. So variable is a memory location, but for any variable data type is a mandatory. I don't know what are all the various data types available in Java. Right, I know what is a data type. Data type is mandatory for a variable, till then I know, but after that I don't know what exactly the various data types available in Java. Right, so let us study more details about this particular data types. Okay, so let's go back to the document and let me study about data types in Java. Okay, so go back to that documentation. In that documentation, these lines are described about what is a data type. Right. So what exactly the data type they have a given, that's really fine. But internally, we need to study more about these data types. Right. So the data type was broadly categorized into two different sections. One is a primitive data type and another one is a reference data type, object data type, or I can also call it as a non-primitive data types. Almost all are having one and the same. The primitive data types and the non-primitive data types. What exactly the meaning of this one? The primitive data types, will store one value at a time. Okay, we can store only one value at a time. So what exactly the meaning of one value at a time? So it means, you know, primitive data types will allow your Java program to store single time one value itself. If you want to store multiple values, you need to create multiple variables. Whereas reference data types allows us in Java to store multiple values at a time. Okay, in order to store multiple values at a time, we are using this particular, okay, we are using this particular reference data types. Okay, primitive is used to store only one data type and reference is used to store multiple values at a time. Gets. So what exactly the subtypes we have inside of this primitive means the various types like, Boolean followed by a character, integer, float. Okay, Boolean, character, float, integer, all these things will fall under the primitive data types. Okay, whereas the non-primitive data types, array, set, collection, list, and few people will consider this string as a non-primitive data type or a reference data type also. Okay, that's fine. So what exactly we are going to study about this one means, let us see in detail about these individual data types on a high level so that we can understand these concepts out over there. So basically, primitive data types. Let me give you an example on a primitive data types like a Boolean, integer, float, and a character. Okay, Boolean, integer, float, and a character. Boolean is a data type which is used to verify the conditional values. Basically, within the Boolean, we will store either a true or a false. Use it to store only the Boolean values. Example is either a true or a false. We can store into that. And if you create a variable for Boolean, by default, the value would be false. Okay, the default value for this Boolean is a false. Okay, that's a simple thing which you need to consider. So in the Boolean, I can store either a true or a false. So go back to your script. Boolean A is equal to true, and the line with a semicolon. Every line in our Java program, we need to end with a semicolon. The Boolean values, you no need to place it in a double quotes, directly write it as a true or a false. See, true is a keyword in Java, hence it is recognized with a bold red color. And Boolean is also a keyword, hence it is recognized with a bold Java. And then Boolean B is equal to false. So for a Boolean, we can store either a true or a false into a single variable. Okay, in a, the possible values are either true or a false, out of which I'm just giving it as a true. That's it. So this is the simple way how you need to define a Boolean data type. Okay, guys, is this point clear for you, or do you have any questions for me with respect to this one, guys? Boolean, how we need to define a Boolean. Am I clear for you, or any questions for me on this data? Okay, good. Considering your silence as you are good, then The next point out over there is the further data types. So we know about a Boolean, which is specifically used to store a Boolean values itself, whereas the integer is the next data type. Integer is the one which is used to store an integer values. Okay, just an integer values we can store into this integer data type. Okay, we can store 32-bit integer values into this integer. Okay, a 32-bit means 2 power 31 basically. That much length you can store it within an integer. That's fine. So here the keyword for this integer data type is int. If you want to define a variable with respect to integer, you no need to type a integer like this. You can define int. Int itself means an integer variable. Int c equal to 5. So I'm storing a value of a 5 into a variable c, which is of an integer data type. Okay, so here I am adding a two slashes here. These two slashes are single line comment, and if I add a slash star, hit enter, it's a multi-line comment. What exactly the comment means? In the Java, comments are used in not only Java, basically in the real world, commands are used for understanding purpose. Okay, commands are used for understanding purpose. What exactly the meaning of this understanding purpose means? See here, guys, I have prepared some code base, and if I have shared this code base with you guys, definitely it will be tough for you to understand what I have created. That's the reason for each and every logic whatever we are creating, we are adding a comments out on top of that logic, mentioning that this is what my desired outcome from this is, so that anyone just by looking into the comment can easily understand what we have implemented in the methods. And immediately a quick question will rise in our mind, okay, if you are specifying the comments, so how come Java will execute the comments? So the thing is, Java won't execute these comments. Java compiler won't execute the comments. They are for just readability. Okay, just for a readability itself, we are using this comments, guys. That's it, nothing more than that. This is a single line comment and this is a multiple line comment. So here I am adding a comment next to a slash slash. We are defining a value true into a variable a, which is of Boolean data type. The same way, we are defining a value false into a variable b, which is of a Boolean data type. The same way, the last one, we are defining a value of 5 into a variable c, which is of a integer data type. See guys, there are certain keywords. Integer, you no need to define a full lengthy like that integer. I can define a int which it is recognizing that. Even we need to remember those keywords as well. Int is a keyword basically. Okay, int is a data type wherein which we can store a 32-bit integer values into that. Okay, cool. And integer was furtherly categorized into short int, long int, and integer. Basically, we are not going to deal with those many types of integers in the real world. If you are good with this integer, it's more than enough for us. Okay, so if you observe now, we studied about a Boolean, we studied about an integer. The next one we want to study is about a float. So float. So what exactly the float is? Basically, float or a floating point can be used whenever you want to store any kind of a decimal values. Okay, if you want to store any kind of a decimal values, we are going to use this float or a double. Okay, this float or a double is specifically used in order to store a value which is of a decimal type. Okay, so here float, let me add a comment. Float or a double used to store decimal values. So whenever you are working on an e-commerce application, usually majority of the products will be in a decimal values, right? The product price will be $129 dot $0.1, something like that. The same thing will be applicable here also. Okay, good. And then the next point on top of this particular one is, okay, so once after I have a specified up to here, this float, we have a created till C. D is equal to, so I have a defined a float at D, 13.5 3 something I'm defining. Okay, 13.558 I have a defined it inside a float. Okay, so whenever I have a defined a float here, so basically it's throwing an error message stating that, say, add a cast to float or change the type of a D to double. So whenever you are dealing with these floats, at the end, if you define it as a float, it will consider it as, okay, this is a floating value. As I have mentioned, double is an another data type which falls under this float. We can pass a double like this. Either of these things we can use in a real world. So float and a double are used in order to store a decimal values into that. Gets. So let me show you a simple hierarchy so that we can easily remember these things. Okay, so uh, primitive data types. I'm changing my font to two. I will place this screenshot in our running notes anyways. You don't need to do anything. Okay, 16. Okay, primitive data types. Thus, primitive data types was broadly categorized into, let me add the circles. Boolean, and we studied about a boolean, right guys? We have studied about a boolean, we have studied about an integer, we have studied about a float, and the next one is a character. Okay, for suppose consider the third one as a float. The float is again having a two subcategories, and integer is having a three subcategories. Okay, so let me write down here. The first one is, okay, the first one out over there is a character. The second one is an integer. Integer was again subcategorized into three types as I have mentioned. Integer, integer, long int, long int, and even there is a byte also inside the integer. And here, if you consider this as a float, inside a float, we have a double, and again the second one is a float. We have a float inside that. And finally, the last one I missed out over there is a Boolean. So the primitive data type was categorized in this way basically. So initially it was split into four different types. Again, the float is subcategorized into two types, and the integer is subcategorized into three different types. Okay, the integer is subcategorized into three different types basically. That's it. So this is all about a primitive data types, and we have studied almost all the things except the char. Let me show you how the char looks like, but before that, I just want to add the screenshot related to the primitive data types to my running notes so that that would be easy for you people to recollect these concepts. Okay, good. And then what exactly the last type we have inside this document, which is a character. Character is a data type which is used to store a single character into that. Okay, okay, basically a single character we can store it into a character data type. And the keyword which we need to use for the character is a char. Okay, the keyword we need to use for this character is a char, and the char f is equal to, in the single quotes I can store a character. Okay, in the single quotes I can store a character. And one more thing, let me add the keywords. I know we already have an idea on a keywords. So these are the keywords. Character will be recognized by a char, integer will be recognized by a int, float will be recognized by a float, a double will be recognized by using a double, and boolean will be recognized by a boolean. These are all the keywords as well. Okay, now these are all the various keywords, and these are all the primitive data types. First of all, before jumping on with the further concept, am I clear for you all with respect to the primitive data types, or do you have any questions for me with respect to the primitive data types, guys? Yes, please go ahead. Yes, consider as a false. For others, it will consider as a zero. No, no, false will be a value for that data type. Okay, false would be a value. You no need to verify that one at all. Basically, if you want whatever the value you can directly assign that value to that variable. So simple thing is there is a default value for everything, right? So if I purchase my Windows machine, by default there are some predefined softwares installed in my machine, right? The similar way, for that data type, the default value is a false, and for remaining data types, the default value is a zero. That's it. So it's the default value. We are not doing anything with respect to the default values, and anyways, we are not going to consider that values at all. As in the real world, we are defining a variable means we want to store a value because of which I'm defining a variable, right? That's the thing. Okay, this is all about a primitive data types, guys, and there is a reference data types also, which we will study in the next session. But as we have studied a simple concept here, now I want to take a small example, and moreover, not exactly an example, I want to try a different scenario here. Okay, so that particular concept of which I want to explain here is a typecasting concept in Java. Okay, so what is a typecasting in Java? Why are we using this typecasting concept in Java? Okay, so what is a typecasting? We need to know first of all, why are we using this one? Before jumping on, we should know what is this a typecasting concept in Java, right? A simple point is, I know the outcome from one variable is as a data type. I'm trying to change that data type to a different data type. See, let me define here. Int p1 equal to some data is there. So here I have a defined a p1 variable which has a 5654 data inside that. Now int p2 equal to p1. So whatever the value we have in a P2, store it in a P1, which is of an integer data type. That's fine. I guess I don't think I can change it to a double. So basically, I'm trying to change it to a character. Okay. P1 is an integer, I know. I'm changing it to a character. Definitely, it's not the case basically, right? I can't store a integer into a character. So my Java Eclipse Editor is throwing an error message. It's saying that add a cast to char. I'll show you that. Change the type of a P2 to an integer, or change the type of a p1 to a character. Either of these things change it, then only I can adjust it. If you are not choosing this change, add a typecast. So the typecast means before this variable, we are specifying this data type, whatever you are converting. Automatically it will be converting into that data type. Initially my p1 is an integer. Whenever I did a typecast here, so the typecast means changing the type. So p1 from integer we are changing it to a character, hence I can store it into a character. Okay, like that I can change my data types. Passing a data type here, we can call it as a typecasting. We are converting the data type for this variable into a different data type. If you observe the p1 is an integer, but before this p1, as I am passing these braces of a char, I am converting that p1 to an integer, a character, and I'm storing that outcome in a character. Immediately, a quick question will rise in our mind. Where are we going to use it? Of course, we are going to use this concept in the real world once we've started working on a Selenium concepts. As we have studied about the data types, I just want to give you an intro about a typecasting concepts. That's it. Done the deal. Am I clear for you till now, or any questions so far? Guys, do let me know if you have any questions till now. Go. Done the deal. And then the next point which I need to consider on top of this, yes, yeah, go ahead. Yes. So what it will happen as we are using a typecasting for this one, if you print the output, then you can understand what exactly it is converting. So in the tomorrow's class, we will see an introduction about the methods, and inside the methods, we will see how to convert and how to print the values and all those things. We will study in the tomorrow's class, and then you can understand how exactly it's converting. Okay. Cool. Done the deal. So this is the thing, guys. This is all about this introduction to an integer. Now it's time for your practice. Kindly go ahead and start practicing this stuff if you don't have any specific questions for me. Do you have any questions or you don't have any questions for me, guys? Okay. Okay then. So go ahead and practice this stuff, guys, and come up with the questions tomorrow so that we can continue the topic in the tomorrow session, guys. And a small request is so join the session